Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order and take a quick roll call, starting on my right.
Troy Whittemore.
Derek Benavides.
Aaron Manuel.
All right, we have a quorum. Ms. Erica?
Notice of a public meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Brownsville pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5, the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meeting Act. Notice is hereby given that the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, has scheduled a regular meeting on Thursday, February 6, 2020, at 5:30 p.m. in the Commission Chambers on the second floor of the Brownsville City Hall, Old Federal Building, located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas, 78520.
And before we start, we'll go ahead and announce that items 3, 4, we're not even going to read them, right?
Right.
Yeah, items 3, 4, and 5 to the audience. If you guys are here for items 3, 4, or 5, they will not be read tonight. We are going to be skipping over those. They are incomplete. Okay?
Okay. One, updates and comments.
Yes. Just some updates. First of all, we have a new member to our team, Mr. Alan Garces. He's our new senior planner.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And since we have a new addition to the team, just to inform you guys that next month we will be presenting the new calendar so we can move into the 2 meetings. So that way developers don't have to wait for 1 month for their subdivisions to be approved. So,
Excellent, excellent.
we will present that calendar and just wait for your approval.
Okay.
Item number 2, approval of the minutes for the regular meeting on January 9th, 2020.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Motion
Second.
from Aaron, a second from Mr. Whittemore. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Public hearings. Item number 6, public hearing and action, Tipton Mortar Subdivision Replat Number 2, final plat.
So just before we move into item number 6, we still need action for items 3, 4,
Oh, okay.
and 5. So
I make a motion to find them incomplete.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Martin. Item 6,
all
Ms.
right,
Erica.
yes.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, it's Tipton Motors subdivision. This subdivision is located near the intersection of East Morrison Road and Pablo Quizal Boulevard. It is 5.275 acres, and it's for commercial purposes. It is found complete.
Make a motion to find it complete.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Number 7.
Item number 7, public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2020-001 to rezone from dwelling Z to general retail G for 1 acre net out of the northwest corner of Lot 1, Block 110, El Jardín re-subdivision in shares 23, 28, 29, 30, and 25. Espiritu Santo Grant, Cameron County, Texas, located at 1456 North Minnesota Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78521.
So this property consists of 1 acre, and the applicant is looking to rezone the use and area districts. The current zoning is dwelling Z, and they're going to general retail G. The proposed use is actually a mixed use. They're going to have apartments and retail plaza. This property is fronting North Minnesota Avenue. This is an aerial view of the property. There is mostly undeveloped land within the vicinity. There is also single-family dwelling. The predominant zoning is dwelling. There's also the ETJ to the east. There is apartment and light retail within the vicinity of the property, and there's also medium commercial. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 14 mailouts and 0 written opposition. Here's another aerial / street view. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Staff supports the approval to rezone from dwelling Z to general retail G.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public forum, and we are on item 7. Are there any comments?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, and a second from Mr. Galonsky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 8.
Item number 8, public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2020-002 to rezone from dwelling A to dwelling G for Lot 7, Block 3, Ebony Heights subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 1768 Marquette Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78520.
So this property has 0.14 acres, and the applicant is looking to just change the area district for the purpose of increasing the footprint of their home. They're going from A to G. This will reduce the setbacks and allow more construction area. This property is fronting Marquette Avenue. This is the aerial view of the property. There is mostly single-family dwelling within the vicinity, and there's also commercial business to the east. The predominant zoning is dwelling. There is also general retail, apartments, and light industrial. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 38 mailouts and 0 written opposition. The street view. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Staff does support the approval to rezone from dwelling A to dwelling G.
What is the proposed use?
They're increasing the size of their home. Right now, the
They're just
rear
doing it-
setback is 25 feet, so they want to add a bedroom to
To an
the back.
addition?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public forum. If there's any comments, we are on number 8.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close public hearing, and a second from Mr. Galonsky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a
Make-
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Okay, I have a motion. I'm going to give that one to Mr. Rendon. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Item number 9, public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2020-003 to rezone from dwelling A to dwelling G for Lot 9, Block 9, Alamo Heights subdivision, Section 2, in addition to the city of Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas, located at 1128 Crockett Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78521.
So this property also has 0.14 acre. The applicant is also looking to rezone just the area district from A to G. The proposed use is a duplex, and it is fronting Crockett Avenue. This is the aerial view. There is single-family dwelling to all directions. There is also commercial business, and there is also other duplex within the neighborhood.
What was that last part you said? There's other,
There's other duplex within the neighborhood.
That was a previous.
The predominant zoning is dwelling. There is also light industrial, light
Right.
commercial, and apartment. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 32 mailouts and 0 written opposition. This is a street view. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Staff does support this, the approval to rezone from dwelling A to dwelling G.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public forum. We are on number 9. Are there any comments? Okay, go ahead and come on forward through the gate right there, and then go ahead and state your name at the podium.
Yes, my name is Jaime Mata, and I live on Crockett Avenue, okay? And I got the data, I don't know what was about rezoning. So I'm against the duplex, if it's gonna be a duplex there, what I understand. But it's on my the order number is 235-2020-003, which is, I don't know if that's the one that comes on the on number 9 here, right? Oh, yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah.
Yes,
I'm against the rezoning on the duplexes.
so yeah, there's apparently what it seems like is that there's a building on that property right now.
No, sir.
There's no
It's
building.
empty, it's empty
It's
lot.
empty?
I live
Okay.
lots away from it.
So it's an empty lot, somebody bought the lot, and what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to add a duplex.
Duplex, right. The thing is that I've seen other duplex have been built on the same measurements as the lot, and the parking spaces are very, very, I mean, they don't have enough parking spaces, and they have to use the street's parking space, and we don't have too much room for, you know, if a person who's gonna live there have two cars on each,
Yeah.
then there's not gonna be enough space for them. They're gonna have to be parked on the street. And in front of my house and on the house and right next to mine, I mean, because of the mailboxes, this and that, they don't have too much spaces there for parking spaces.
Yeah, and so even if this passes here, since this is planning and zoning, this is just to determine whether or not that they're within the zoning and the future plan of the city, if it fits within that scope of that part of the city, that neighborhood, is after this, they're still gonna have to submit plans to the city in order to get them approved. And in order to get them approved, they have to show a certain number of spaces for the duplex. If they don't, they will not pass, and it will not happen. So they're gonna have to comply with the standards that are set for the city, and so it's gonna have to pass those standards. So I would tell you, at least that should provide some type of relief.
And
Yes,
it
but
can
like I said,
always
excuse me,
appeal.
like I said, there's a year ago, it was a duplex built on Austin Avenue. And I'm telling you, the parking spaces, I mean, for a duplex, for a house, that's fine. For a duplex, I don't
For a
think it is.
duplex, they tell them how many parking spaces they need for it.
Two per,
Right.
It's two per, what's it?
it's two,
So for a duplex, it's not the same as an apartment that requires 2 spaces per unit.
Per unit.
It's actually just based on driveway. So each one has to have a driveway. A driveway for up to capacity, at least one, but normally if
There'll be three, at least three.
no, a driveway for each unit.
So
They
two.
can potentially park one vehicle in each driveway, and sometimes they'll do it up to have even 2 vehicles stacked
That's what for.
on the property.
yeah, they need-
So, and then the other problem that we face is because we're planning and zoning, if it is a white curb in your neighborhood, legally, you're able to park there as long as you're not blocking, obstructing a fire hydrant, red lane. So otherwise, if it's a white curb, which I'd venture to say that 90% of that neighborhood is the same as my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Which is, there's white curb. And so I totally understand that it's frustrating. I am frustrated too when my neighbors park directly behind my driveway with my massive truck and I almost hit them every morning. But the reality is that they're well within their right to park on the curb. And so I apologize that we're not able to do anything about that here.
No, okay, well, that was my concern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing it up, though. Appreciate that. Ma'am, go ahead. Please approach the bench and just state your name.
Hello, I'm Jessica Barrientos, and my dad is the owner of that lot, number 9. And the lot is 60 by 100, which it's required for a duplex to be built, right? So I don't think it will be a concern. And like he says, it's going to be on a driveway, 2 cars, perfectly fine. And there's other neighbors on the sides, and like you say, in the back, that park on the street, and we can't do anything about it.
Yep.
But each duplex, will have 2 spaces, which is no problem at all.
You're going to have each
Yeah.
one of the duplexes.
It's
so
the
you'll have a-
parking space for at least 2 cars each.
Each, so you'll have a total of 4.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's
Oh,
even,
okay.
that's
That's
more
even-
than,
It's a
better.
driveway, which
so
is,
that's more than what is required, and that's really nice. That's very convenient. I'm
Good
sure
deal.
you'll probably get better rent for that as well, because it's
I hope
nicer to be able to park in a driveway.
so.
So, yeah, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you
and
so
then
much.
there's other duplex around the corner, so,
Yes, ma'am.
and I have pictures of that, but like he said, there's other duplexes there in the corner, so
Sure.
there shouldn't be a problem.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for bringing that up.
Cool.
All right. Any other public comment? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close public.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Motion to approve based on staff's recommendations.
Motion to approve, and I have a second for Mr. Galonsky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Best of luck to you guys.
Item number 10, public hearing and action on ordinance number 235, 2020-004, to rezone from dwelling C, medium commercial G, medium commercial V to dwelling G for 61.0 acre tract of land comprised of all lots 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8A,
Next.
8B, Block 2 of the Manuel Tamano partition, save and accept a 0.312 acre tract, a 0.196 acre tract, a 1.209 acre tract, and a 0.242 acre tract of land, Cameron County, Texas, located near Garden Woods Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78526.
So, this property consists of 61 acres. It currently has a mixed zoning. As you can see, it's dwelling Z, medium commercial G, and medium commercial V. They're just trying to make it consistent to be all dwelling G. This case is also tied to a planned development that was recently approved here at the commission for Applewood subdivision. So it's just one of the following process that they have to do in order to make it comply. It is fronting, it's located near Garden Woods Avenue. This is the aerial view of the property. There's mostly undeveloped land. There's single-family dwelling to the south and commercial business to the east. The predominant zoning is dwelling. There is also medium commercial. There's general retail, dwelling retail. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 21 mailouts and 0 written opposition. This is a street view. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Staff does support the approval to rezone from dwelling Z, from dwelling Z, medium commercial G, medium commercial V to dwelling G.
This is way on the north side.
Yes. It's close to the intersection of 511 and Paredes.
Okay. What is the street that it fronts?
It's Garden Woods subdivision. It's directly south of it. Right now, Stagecoach Trail is unimproved. That's a street that actually fronts it.
That's
But-
802, or out in
Right,
Glory
so-
right there, right?
What's that?
So this is Stagecoach Trail. It's in part of the thoroughfare plan.
Yeah.
It's gonna be developed in the future.
And that's 511 up on the top side?
Right, this is 511.
And that's,
and
Paredes line.
This is Paredes.
okay. I know where that is now. And so this is just kind of a mix of zonings, and they're trying to do it to where it's all gonna be single-family housing?
Right.
Is
Yeah.
Cool.
this not where CDCP is gonna do?
No,
This is way
no.
north.
The
This is way north.
CDCB development is to the west. So the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Staff to support the rezone
Yeah,
and-
way west.
from dwelling Z, medium commercial G, medium commercial V to dwelling G.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public forum. If there's any comments, we are on item number 10. Okay, I have a motion to close public. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Aaron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any questions, comments? All right, do I have a motion?
I make a motion.
Motion to approve by Mr. Whittemore. This sounds like I have a second from Mr. Galonsky. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, item number 11, public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2020-601-CU, an ordinance allowing a conditional use permit for a wet store for lot 97, block 4, section 1 of Lomas del Bosque subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 4200 Jaime J. Zapata Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78521.
So this property consists of 0.85 acres. The proposed use is a wet store. It's actually a meat market that wants to open up to be able to sell alcohol. and the request is for a conditional permit to be allowed to do so. The property is fronting Highway J. Zapata. This is the aerial view of the property. There is single-family dwelling to the north and the south, as well as the west. There's commercial business. The reason why it's not in compliance or it doesn't comply with the land spacing requirements, it's because there's a school directly to the west. It's only 76 feet away.
Is that Gonzalez? Or
No, that's Jubilee Academy.
Jubilee?
Yes. So the predominant zoning is dwelling. There is also general retail, medium industrial, and apartment. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 27 mailouts and 0 written opposition. This is the street view. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Staff supports the approval of a conditional use permit to allow the sale of alcohol for off-premises consumption in general retail J.
Staff still they are able to support this,
Yes.
even with the school across the street?
Right, so this is just based on land spacing requirements that the ordinance has, so it's the
And it's
minimum.
not, and it's not a bar,
No, it's
Yeah.
just a store that they actually want to sell beer.
like a convenience store?
Right,
Yeah.
right, it's a meat market and they want to sell alcohol, yes. If they were to have, let's say, fifth commercial, they wouldn't have to comply with land spacing requirements. So this is just to circumvent the 200-foot requirement.
Now, this gives them the opportunity to sell just beer and wine or up to liquor as well?
That depends on the license that they apply, but for a liquor store, that's even more restrictive with the distances. That would require 1,000 feet.
And that's TABC as well?
Yes,
That's their jurisdiction?
yes.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public forum. If there's any comments regarding this, we're on item number 11. Will I have a motion to close public?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. What are the wishes?
Feel like
I don't have any, I mean,
feel like I'm dominating everything. I'll make a motion to approve.
I
Keep it moving on.
have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against? Okay, ayes have it. Motion carries. Next one, Martin, thank you.
Item number 12, public hearing and action on ordinance number 235-2020-901 to rezone from dwelling Z to light commercial G for lots 2, 3, and 4, block 302 in Jardín Reese subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located near the intersections of South Most Road and South Indiana Avenue, Brownsville, Texas, 78521.
So this property consists of 98.05 acres. The request is just to rezone they're going to rezone the use district and the area district from dwelling Z to light commercial G. The proposed use is for a tactical training facility for law enforcement. This property was actually recently annexed to the city. So, and it is near the intersection of South Most Road and South Indiana Avenue. This is the aerial view of the property. So it was recently annexed right here, still shown in the ETJ. And the predominant zoning within the vicinity is dwelling. There is also general retail. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 17 mailouts and 0 written opposition. This is a street view. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. Staff supports the approval to rezone from dwelling Z to light commercial G.
That's why I'm gonna oppose it.
Why? Because it's a city?
Hold on.
No, just not because of the city. We have all this land around it that we are making subdivisions in there, and the shooting range.
Hold on. This is a public
All right,
hearing.
yeah, let's open it up to, this is a public
Get
forum.
coordinated here.
If the public has any comments, we are on item number 12. All right.
We're
I have
on
a motion to
12.
close public.
Hold on. Do you have, explain your issues.
Well, my issue is that it's a shooting range. We are, all around, we are making development.
Well, I do want to point out, it is an existing shooting range. They just want to turn it into a bigger facility
It's an
than,
existing shooting range now, no?
yes.
So they will eliminate the shooting range?
Well, we actually cannot do that.
Yeah, making you work tonight. Get up here.
It's not actually an expansion of just the shooting range. It's a tactical training center where they'll be able to learn how to drive, they'll be able to learn how to handle crisis situations. A lot of different types of training facilities will be developed on the site, and it's a joint city-county partnership. So
How many?
we hope you'll support that.
How many acres out there?
98.05.
98?
This is what I own right now. That's what I'm okay. It's okay. What do you want me to do?
If there's any reason why you wouldn't support an already existing thing that is going to aid our law enforcement in being more trained in responding the times that you need the police officers to respond, and they're gonna respond that much faster and that much more tactically when you need them. If you can have another reason on why it would not pass or why it would not go through, then please speak your mind. But otherwise,
It's really question, I mean, I'm all in favor of doing, improving stuff, but my question is this. What will happen in that area if it's gonna be a shooting range? It will be probably.
it already is.
And it will be.
It already is a shooting range for Brownsville PD.
So,
Can I interject? I'm working on the paperwork, and I work with the paperwork, trying to deal with this. This is in conjunction with also DPS, state office DPS. This would be a training facility, it's not gonna be just an open range, shoot, probably closed ranges, also we're gonna have classes. They're going to involve bringing in law enforcement agencies from Alpha Valley to come train here in this Brownsville facility. So it's gonna bring more traffic, more people, hopefully more money to the community, but that's the intent. We went to most of the DPS.
okay, basically, okay, let's say if I do agree on tourism or whatever it is, but they'll have to make some fences or something around it, so it will not.
Well, it's the city of Brownsville is not, the last time I checked, the airport's got a pretty good fence around it. So I don't anticipate them having a bunch of toddlers running around there from the nearest elementary.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, we good? All
We're
right,
good.
do I have a motion?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion, okay, I think we already closed, no, we didn't, you're
No,
right.
you didn't.
So we get do I have a second to close public? I have a second from Mr. Aaron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. You should make a motion to approve this. Go.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Excellent.
And I'm gonna second that.
And all in favor, say aye. Aye. There are no nays up here. Motion carries. Next item.
That's a good
Item number
citizen
13,
there.
public hearing and action to repeal and replace commercial parking regulations in section 348.1381 off-street parking with interim commercial parking regulations and dealing with related matters.
That's us.
Mr. Chairman, Commission, as you know, we're currently working on a rewrite of our entire development code, and we expect to deliver that to the Commission sometime in December for review and for your recommendation to the City Commission. But between now and December, we still receive building permits daily, and our parking standards are creating situations where our building officials are not able to issue permits because of the type of parking ordinance that we currently operate under. And we gave you some examples of those requirements. For example, apartments require two spaces for each apartment, dormitories, half space, bowling alleys, et cetera, and et cetera. So if an applicant is not able to meet that specific criteria, one of two things happen. Either the project doesn't go forward, or they're required to scale back their particular development in order to meet those prescriptive parking requirements. So we're proposing revisions or interim rules until the Unified Development Code is brought forward to you, and the standards that we're looking at now would probably be incorporated into that document if that's what the consultant finds that will work best for Brownsville. But in the interim period, we'd like to consider a set of interim parking rules. The new rules are designed where on-street parking might be counted towards required parking when it's adjacent, abutting the site. It'll establish minimum parking standards. It'll give us the option to consider joint use parking between separate businesses. It allows us to reduce required parking if bicycle parking is provided. If we don't have uses identified within our code, we would typically have to come to the commission, come to the Planning Commission, go to the City Commission, and have a new standard adopted. We're asking you to adopt the Institute of Transportation Engineers Reference Manual. So when we don't have a use, we would just go to the manual and pick what the Institute recommends and work with that number. We're also going to set a maximum number of uses to promote efficient use of the land, so we're not over committing land to surface parking lots. Kmart, the old Kmart is a great example. There's land fronts up on Pablo Quisel that would make great pad sites for restaurants, but currently the parking is required for the existing vacant retail structures, but this would give us a tool to be able to take a look at that and potentially permit additional development. And we'd also include a parking management area program with shared parking. And Alan's going to go into that in more depth and give you an example as to how that would actually work. The proposed standards, this is a layout of how I'm going to walk you through the changes that we're proposing. If you look at the column, that's the land use that we would be discussing, and then there's a minimum and a maximum. We're going to recommend to you that minimum and maximum. The next column shows you what the current standard is, and on some land uses, there are two additional recommendations. One is by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and one is by the Urban Land Institute. So I'm not sure where our current parking standards came from. They probably have just evolved over time and been modified as you've had different directors and planning commissions work together. But the Institute of Transportation Engineers conducts a national survey of comparable communities in size and locations and types, and they come up with a standard, or a recommended standard from an engineer's perspective. The other organization is the Urban Land Institute, and that is a developer-oriented organization, a national organization, and they have conducted parking studies for specific uses that tend to impact the development industry, and they also have a recommendation. So you have, for certain uses, in particularly the retail area, you're going to see that we have potentially 3 different recommendations, and we'd like to walk you through, and you select the one that you think best fits the needs here in Brownsville. We'll recommend the minimum and maximum as our recommendation, but then if you look at the ITE or the ULI recommendation, you can reconcile those and tell us if you'd like to go in a different direction. So you just had a individual speak about the lack of parking within our residential uses. The first category there under group living is dwelling residential, and the current standard requires 1 per dwelling unit or 2 per apartment, including condos and townhomes. The proposed standard doesn't change much. It's 1 per unit plus 1 per bedroom, 1 per bedroom over 3 bedrooms, and then 1 per accessory dwelling units. And single resident occupancy units are exempt. A single resident occupancy unit is a very small 300 to 400 square foot unit where it's just for one person, designed for one person, and typically they don't see a lot of automobile use with single room occupancy. They tend to be transit dependent population, so there's not a requirement for parking for SROs. So on the dwelling, that's our staff recommendation. There's ITE's, his recommendation is 1.2 parking spaces per unit, and ULI is 1.5. Interesting, because the developer, or the Land Development Association, ULI, recommends 1.5, and we're at 1 per unit unless you exceed 3 bedrooms. So if you're comfortable with that, we would stick with the a staff recommendation, or you could elect ITE or ULI.
What's the difference between ITE and ULI?
0.3.
No, but
The type of organization, ITE is engineers,
okay,
civil engineers that study land development, and ULI is developers, commercial shopping centers, developers, realtors, commercial developers.
gotcha. And so they're saying that, the ULI is saying that on dwelling residential, that there should be 1.5 spaces per
Dwelling unit.
dwelling unit. Because currently, right now, it's 1 per plus 1 per bedroom.
Well, that's our recommendation
That's our
to the
recommend-
commission. Right now is what's labeled at the top of the column, Brownsville parking. That's our current standard, 1 per dwelling.
And so we would have the opportunity of deciding
Yes,
which one in a
Absolutely.
situation like that, because,
Correct.
I mean, that, to me, that sounds like it's shrinking the parking on ULI and ITE on a standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
that's correct. So right now, we're at 1 per dwelling unit. ITE recommends a slightly higher requirement, and ULI recommends an even higher requirement. So you could modify our current recommendation up to 2 per dwelling unit. You could keep it at its 1 per unit, or what we're suggesting under minimum is 1 per unit unless the house is greater than 3 bedrooms, then you would add another parking space.
Gotcha. That sounds to me like it's a better option, what you guys are recommending.
Go forward with that. We're going to move away from the residential now and into the commercial standards. And so if you look at the columns, once again, ITE and ULI will only make recommendations on specific uses that they study. We're recommending the minimum and the maximum. And then you have Brownsville's current standards. So for an office space, our current standard reads that 1/3 of a space is required for every 100 square feet gross floor area, and 11/20 of a space for every employee. So it's a little difficult for us to administer and calculate, and it takes time, and it's complicated for our developer customers to follow. The proposed recommendation from the staff is 1 per 500 or as a minimum, and 1 per 200 as a maximum. And it kind of averages out about the same with the ITE and ULI. ITE is a little higher. ULI is about pretty close to what we are right now. So we're recommending, ULI's recommendation is close to our minimum recommendation, the 1 per 500 square feet.
Okay.
Move
Now-
forward.
Now, are you, or after we go through this, are we gonna be deciding on some of these, or are you looking?
You can decide as you go along, or you can decide at the end. Once we go through the table and Alan gives you an example, we're going to ask you for a recommendation for
Okay.
approval or denial up to the city commission.
Okay,
The next one is setting a minimum for medical and dental offices of 1 per 500 square feet. We currently don't have a standard, so that would be a new standard for us. Same thing with quick vehicle servicing. Retail, of course, is always a critical one. You can see the Brownsville's current standard is 3/10 of a space for every 300 square feet above and beyond 1,000 square feet of non-storage area, 1 space. And so our recommendation is just a straight 1 per 330 square feet. ULI recommends 2.65 spaces per 1,000 square feet. And I'm sorry, ITE does. ULI is 3.6 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Restaurant and bars, we're recommending 1 per 250 square feet. Right now, our current ordinance requires 1 space for every 100 square feet. And ITE represents 13.3 per 1,000, and ULI represents 10 per 1,000. So we're pretty our parking for restaurant and bars is pretty high. Then there's health clubs and gyms. ULI and IT do not make a recommendation. We're recommending the minimum and maximum. The next is hotels or temporary lodging. We're currently at 1 per room and 11/20th of a space per employee. We would require just a straight 1 per room and actually max that out at 1.5 per rental room. The current standard for theaters is 1 per 4 seats. We're recommending 1 per 4 seats or 1 per 6 feet of bench area. Some of the theaters have changed. They no longer have seats. They have bench type seating, so that's a different standard. We'd have it available to consider if we get that type of development. Then the larger box retail sales of appliance and furniture. Right now, we require 2 spaces for building area up to 1,000, 1 for every 300 square feet after that. We would just have a straight standard of 1 per 1,000 square feet of floor area. And we don't currently have a standard for vehicle repair. We would establish that at 1 per 750 square feet and a maximum of 1 per 200 square feet. The other category would now be our industrial parking standards. Again, IT and ULI do not make recommendations on these land uses. We do not have some of these land uses in our current ordinance, so this would add further definition to parking requirements for industrial land uses. We currently require 1 for every 2 employees. This would have a minimum and a maximum of 1 per 1,000 square feet floor area and 1 per 200 square feet of floor area as a maximum. And we would break that between rail yards, wholesale sales, manufacturing and production, and warehouse and freight type movements. And then there's institutional uses. Again, we don't have a lot of these land uses in here within the city. ITE does not recommend and ULI does not recommend. We do have space requirements for medical facilities, 1 space per bed, 1 space for every doctor, 1 space for every visiting doctor. I don't know how we would calculate that. I'm not sure we would actually be able to quantify how many visiting doctors and how many corresponding parking spaces they would need. That would be very complicated to gather that information every time. So this sets a flat 1 per 500 square feet of floor area and a maximum of 1 per 200 square foot of floor area. And for our parks department will make the determination what they need based on their demand. Churches, right now we require 1 for every 5 seats. We'd go to just a square footage calculation of 1 per 100 square feet. And for our schools, it would be 1 per classroom. And right now we have 1 space for every 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. The other categories that kind of fall out of residential, retail, and industrial are agricultural. We won't have any requirements for our airport. We only have 1 airport, so we don't think we really need a standard. We'll let the airport director figure that out. Public facilities like the training center you talked about, or other essential public facilities, public work yards and so forth, we'll figure that out as we go along. And for any wireless communication facilities or rail facilities, we will not have required parking. They'll be able to figure out what their parking needs actually are. And with that, Alan's going to go ahead and kind of walk you through how some of these new standards would actually be able to.
Real quick question. What about existing businesses that may not, if these are adopted, that might not fit that requirement?
Yeah,
grandfathered?
So they would be non-conforming, but this also provides them more tools to be able to come in and re-permit their parking requirements. So maybe they're changing a land use that may require more parking, and under the current parking standards, we wouldn't allow that business to be permitted. But under the proposed parking, we now have the flexibility of having the shared parking, the time of day parking, so we actually could issue permits to that.
But they would be, so the ones that are existing that would end up being non-compliant would have to come in for rezoning?
Well, I think we're less restrictive under the new standards, so I don't think they're gonna have a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're always thinking you got
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairperson, Commissioners. Thank you for coming today. So just a quick example. I know you guys got a lot of numbers thrown at you, so I'm trying not to do that. So what happens a lot in the city is that we get these developers coming in and saying, we have a building, a shell, but I don't know what I'm going to do there yet. I'm just going to see what happens, but basically this is what's going to look like. Let's just call it retail and figure it out by 1/10 of parking space for every 100 seats, yada, 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 right? So basically they get their parking, and then you end up seeing different uses, right? You get more than retail, you get offices, you get restaurants coming in, and of course they don't all come in at the same time. They got people one day coming in for a restaurant, another day or another month they got something else, and eventually that parking's running out. And what happens is that someone else wants to come in, and we have to basically tell them, hey, you don't have enough parking. I'm sorry, maybe go elsewhere, or maybe we have to take them to the Zoning Board of Adjustments for a special exception or variance, basically making it a little bit more harder than it really has to be. And as Mr. Vasquez mentioned, with the new proposed parking requirements, we're basically just going to give you a number of what you got to divide your square footage by, and that's what it's going to be, whether it's for new or existing. That's basically your number. Now, for the existing, as you guys were talking about just now, what we're basically saying is that the existing square footage is going to be divided, multiplied by, depending on the time of day that is, which is going to be the busiest. So we're allowing people to go in when they weren't really being able to go in before. We're letting them know, like, okay, your parking requirement changed a little bit. It's actually not as important about what you had before, but now that we're allowing you to go in, we're trying to calculate based on the numbers that we got up here during the day itself when you're going to be able to go in. So like in this example that I'm giving you here, there's a lot of uses that are going to be busy mostly throughout the day. You see some offices there. Based on this table that's shown on your screen, table number 2, we multiplied the numbers that were shown on the plaza for each table, or each column, sorry. And from that is an example that you'll see here. Basically what we're saying is that because during the weekday, you're gonna need 21, that's the time it's gonna be the busiest. In this case, we're saying this whole plaza is gonna be shared, so you're gonna be fine. We're gonna allow that person to go in, basically saying, as long as you meet that 21, because that's the time it's gonna be the busiest, we won't necessarily be being a little bit more strict and telling people that they are not gonna be able to be there. In this case, they are going to be able to go in, use that shared parking area, because we're being a little bit more flexible as far as shared parking. Especially for existing, I feel like this parking table is going to help those that want to go into suites that are already in the city. So in this case, like I said, this is what we're proposing. If the board wishes or wants to make different requirements, they can. But that's basically what we're seeing there right now. Because they're able to have 21 spaces at the busiest time of day for what's there and the new use that's going in, they'll be able to basically open up shop.
And this is less restrictive than what it is right now.
Exactly, because if right now someone wanted to come in and there was no parking available, well, that's basically what we're saying. We're saying because all the parking's already used up, you can't go into that suite you want to.
But this is taking into consideration that some businesses are open regular business hours, some are open late, and so therefore,
Oh,
you're not
absolutely,
gonna be
yes, the
using
proposed
all the
requirements that
parking.
we're showing, yeah. We're getting away from the 3/10 and so on, it's giving out flat numbers.
Now, what is this based on? Did we pick that up from some cities our side that they have no parking problems? Or how did all those numbers come?
So the minimum and maximums that we're recommending, we looked at the ITE, the ULI, and we also looked at valley cities, McAllen, Edinburgh, and now our standards are consistent with what they're doing in those cities.
Not with what they're doing, because they might have a mess too. I'm gonna know some place that they don't have any problems.
Right. So,
This is one thing, and the next thing, my question is, was from now on, let's say if some places that they don't have enough parking for their businesses, how will you all enforce it?
I don't, if I may, I don't think they have to enforce it. That, number one, that's not their responsibility, but because
Well, the
if
city
you,
has to enforce it.
no, because if there's no parking, then as a plaza owner, if you own that plaza, then you're mismanaging your tenants by, and then anybody that's, if you got 100% of your spaces that are packed all day long, and you have 4 units still left over, you're not gonna be able to rent to anybody. So you as a plaza owner, you've messed up. So the city's not gonna have to regulate. I like this because this is the city getting out of the way and allowing the business owners to manage it, because they're gonna be able to manage it better, knowing that, hey, listen, I can't fit another restaurant in here.
I understand
Yeah.
everything you said. But my question is, there is a lot of spaces there are rented out, and they don't even have parking spaces. What happens?
You don't go there.
They're gonna drop.
I don't go there. I mean,
You're not gonna
but
be able
this,
to rent.
Well, those
But yeah, they're
that
not gonna
you're
be able to rent.
mentioning, that's because of what we're seeing earlier, where you just get these shells, and then they just provide the minimum amount of parking that they can, and then they actually rent it out for different uses. So that's what triggers the overflow of parking, because it wasn't accounted to have different uses. So now what we're saying is we're going to be flexible with existing and new plazas coming in by giving them the new standard.
That's
But
right.
the problem is, like, we have a lot of commercial businesses, and we have enough, I do have enough parking for what I need. But there is other people that don't have, so the way they do it, they go and park on our spaces. And then what happens, that's what I'm thinking.
you as an owner have the ability to tow the vehicles.
You also have now, if that other plaza owner does not have adequate parking, but they want to open, a new tenant wants to open and are not able to meet their parking requirement, they can now approach you about leasing your surplus spaces.
Yes, but the problem-
Whereas right now, you're not able to do
there
that.
is People come in, wherever they see a parking place, they will drive in and stop there.
Sure.
Now, to get them out, how can you do that? You're gonna call police? They don't even come, they're not gonna listen to you.
You can call tow truck.
Yeah, that's true.
Tow truck, I've done that at my plaza.
Yeah, tow truck, yes, I agree with you on doing that, yes, but you hate to get a poor guy and make him pay
Well,
$300.
But it's the same thing. I mean, if they're gonna be parking in your place without permission, and
I read it, I don't like
But
it.
would the new, so then if there's a plaza next door, they would have to have, let's say, an agreement with him that he's gonna open up his parking space. If not, they're not gonna get to rent there.
They're not going to be able to get a building permit if they can't meet that
So then
parking
it would be
requirement because they're
contingent.
maxed out. Now we'll be able to count not just the on-site parking, we'll be able to count abutting adjacent street parking, on-street parking, but we also can consider if there's surplus parking on the neighbor's site, they can work out an agreement, and that agreement can be presented to us, and we'd still be able to permit that new
it's a
tenant.
great idea because
Yeah,
it gives the ability for businesses to work together. They can share their parking spaces. You can fit more businesses, like, great example, the Kmart. That would be a great place to be able to add a whole lot of places along the frontage road there, or not the frontage road, but the fronting Pablo Quisel. And so I think that's a great idea.
And we know Kmart's not gonna be busy at 10, 11, 12.
Exactly, yeah. I mean,
That's
why
right,
you
and this
add-
also
that's-
recognizes the flow of traffic where our current ordinance does not. We just assume a flat number, and then you
Yeah.
either meet the number or you don't. This way, we're able to take into consideration the shifts in parking demand over time.
Perfect sense.
Great idea.
So all we need is a motion and a recommendation whenever you're ready to move
Do you
forward.
need us to go one by one?
So to make the variable recommendations easier, I gave you this. The green ones are the ones that have ULI recommendations and ITE recommendations. So we're recommending the minimum and the maximum. If the commission disagrees and would like to swap out with either ITE or ULI's recommendation, we would need a separate motion just so we get your direction on which one you want to go with. If you want to just adopt it in total under the minimums and the maximum, you can do that as well. It's
You
up to
all
the
have gone
commission.
through this.
Yes, sir.
You guys have spent extensive amount of time going through this one by one. Okay,
And we're comfortable with the staff recommendation for the minimum and maximum, and if we ever have to modify, we can always come back.
you want more government. You want them to regulate,
No,
you
but I
want them to
don't-
regulate
If
heavier.
you stop for your car and they pull it out of there, they're gonna have to pay $300 or something like that.
For what?
There's poor people here that come for from wherever they come,
Yep.
you, to a tow truck costs about $300. And if he doesn't come the same day, if he comes the next day, it's probably another 100 more.
Then don't tow them. Let them park there.
Okay, forget it, keep on going. Dale gas.
You want to make the motion then?
No, I'm not gonna make a motion, hell no.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, do I have a second to close public?
Second to close
All right.
public.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, I'm opposed.
You're going to oppose public comment? Do we need quorum to vote on, do we need a majority in order to pass this?
Make your motion.
We've got three, we'll have three votes.
Majority, yeah.
That's majority, right? We don't need the, yeah, okay, so.
What if I?
Do I have you have a motion, then that's different then. You have a motion to, regarding this parking, do we have a motion?
Staff's recommendation.
Yes. All right, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Just to be clear, are we going one by one?
No, we
The
are,
whole thing.
we're going based on their recommendations, their extensive work that they've done on this.
I'm gonna second the motion.
Okay, I have a second on the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 All against?
I'm gonna call it Nancy Pelosi
We
up
have
here.
three ayes and one nay. Motion carries.
Right?
Thank you all for your hard work on this. It is so important. It is so important. I wanted to be on the record that it is so important to get this stuff done. To that way, it allows business
Welcome
to
aboard. Good
move
job,
forward,
man.
to get through that process is exactly what we've been looking for as a city. And the voters have been looking for this to get these kind of things, get the red tape out of the way. So I appreciate all your all's efforts, regardless of the nays on this panel.
The nay, not plural.
I'm
Next
gonna go-
item on the agenda.
Item number 14, public hearing and action on ordinance number 2020-1652-A to readopt the historic preservation plan for 2020.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. I'm Juan Velez, the Historic Preservation Officer, and I'm happy to come here to explain you the 2020 Historic Preservation Plan. The whys of the preservation plan is on the earliest 1980s, it was adopted, the tax incentive program to encourage the preservation of the most outstanding buildings that we have here. Brownsville is the third oldest city in the Cameron County and the Rio Grande Valley. The other two cities are located in the Star County. Brownsville has probably the more important, well, probably not, for sure the more important historic fabric that is here in the valley, from the border brick style that we inherited from Matamoros, the golden era of the 1830s, to the mid-century modern style. And as per Section 348-1502, the ad valorem tax incentives program, the City Commission shall approve every single year the program that we recommend to be approved. And naturally, there are several steps that we have to go through. You will see later. And finally, this historic preservation plan is something that it's adopted and recommended by the Historic Preservation and Design and Review Board. As you know, there are some interesting members sitting there, such as Calvin Walker, the chair, or Larry Loff, Tara Putunat, and many others that every single month meet to proceed with the recommendations. The process is always the same. We start with the Historic Preservation and Design Review Board to have their approval. We then go to this commission, to the Planning and Zoning, then City Commission, and the last step is going through the rest of the participating taxing entities, such as, BND, Cameron County, and TSC. Unfortunately, the BSD didn't participate the last year, but we hope that in the very near future, we'll get them on board again. And finally, the Cameron County Appraisal District. So in 2019, there were 18 full properties. The properties were distributed in National Register Historic Places and Recorded Texas Historical Landmarks. Those designations are being given by the state of Texas and the National Park Service as well. the local designated primary resources, and the substantial rehabilitations that are done in Brownsville. On the 2020, we have 95 properties. As you can see, the split is 15, 21, 32, and 21, and finally 6 properties that suppose an economic impact on the city of around $94,000.
This is 95 new property?
No. There were 80. There were 84
Okay, so
the last year. Yeah.
Okay.
So what it happens is that some property owners. Thank you for your question because it's pretty interesting. Some property owners simply rehab or did the works that they didn't do the last year, and there are 6 proposed new substantial rehabs. So we only increased really 6 because there were many others on the previous programs, but the last year we simply removed from the plan because they were not doing their job, that is maintaining the.
How many were removed?
They were removed. The last year we removed 50. So
Sorry, say it again.
50.
50,
Yeah. So
50,
50. Yeah.
removed them from their tax exempt status?
That's right. So then there were some reactions. So the difference between 80 something to 95, less the 6 new proposals.
But that was because those 50 were not maintaining,
were not maintaining properly.
or they had made modifications that kicked them out of.
No, simply they were not maintaining.
Just not
So
maintaining.
it was a kind of,
Yeah,
to do it.
sure. Okay.
So that's the reaction we got it this year. And also there are always new properties that become, for example, state markers. And we have one that is new this year, so we have to include as a recorded Texas historical landmark, etc. I think that we have 2 of those. So the importance of this from adoption is we are stressed by the Cameron Appraisal District. We have to introduce to them pretty soon, early on March, because on March 13 they will want to have the deadline with all the properties approved, so they can follow their notice depicts to the property owners, and finally to apply the homestead exemptions, as you can see on the lower schedule that is written here. So I will be happy to answer any kind of.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you tell an owner of a property that you think it's historical, or they have to come to you and ask you for it?
Yeah, they have to come to us even when we are planning to send letters to the more than 2,200 historic property owners to let us say educate them on what do they have and what is this kind of process.
But you do go to people and you tell them to educate them.
Well, it's usually the opposed. They come to us and they say, hey, what about my building? Is my building, could be my building significant? What kind of economic help could I have, and so on. So we want to turn that into an active role, but to do so also and taking advantage of the.
The reason I'm telling you and I'm asking you,
Mhm.
I have probably a lot of historical buildings, maybe most of the historical. We have not asked for tax exemption. That's why I asked, why did you come and tell us to do that?
Yeah. Well, one of the there are several.
We have, no, I don't want, I don't care we pay for it. Because the reason that I'm telling you is, I think if a building, even if it is historic, and it's rented out, and that they have income, they should pay taxes.
Well, what the state of Texas says in these cases is that the building has must have more than 50 years and must be in a kind of good condition, meaning that if it has been removed, I don't know, for example, historic windows there, practically that's one of the very, very big issues that they do have, that let us say the exterior, the skin of the building could be maintained. If it has been removed, then you cannot qualify for in this case, tax credits, and then as a sequence of that, you could not receive tax exemptions, because tax exemptions, let us say, that are approaching buildings that are,
I mean, it's like if I have a building
yep,
and it's rented out and it's producing income, right? Most of the people here are getting a certain exemption, like 25% or 50%. And I would like for you to put in something that if the buildings are rented, even if they're 100%, they should pay something.
Something.
Even if you're renting it back yourself?
Huh?
Even if you're renting it back yourself? If you own ABC Corporation and that's what the building
Yes,
owns, but if
yes,
you're,
even if you rent it back to yourself, if it's 100% rented out to yourself, why not? If you're making business out of it, why not pay any taxes on it?
so you're saying that they have to live in the house
Not-
or live in
not
the
necessarily-
commercial building?
Basically, I'm talking about commercial. I'm not talking about residential.
So if you buy a, say the HEB down there, downtown is historic, and you buy,
I don't believe that.
no, I know it's not, I'm just using it as an example, but I'm
I
just,
don't- that-
no, it's a contributing structure,
If you-
that
if
could
you-
be perfectly,
if you were to use that building and then put it into 10 pieces and rent it out, you're saying they should pay tax on
Yes.
the rental income?
Yes, sir.
that you would not have to pay?
No, he's saying that you would have to pay taxes on the rental income.
I don't see that the HEB historical at all.
But the thing is, but
What
here's,
significance does that have in historical?
That's
I'm not,
mid-century.
I was just using it as an example. I was
Yeah,
not saying that
understand, I'm
HEB
just
is
asking.
historical.
Well, let me, for example, I don't know, go through any kind of, we have different situations, but mainly, for example, let me see here, let me see one of the recorded.
The Cameron County Jail, it's a law office.
The Cameron County Jail, for example, you have 4 partners there. They rehabbed the building a long time ago, and therefore, I suppose that the property owner is a different one that rents to the, thank you for that rent to the 4 partners there, so there's a tax involved. So because they
But the
went through
owner
a
of the
huge,
building-
no, but this is the case, Mr. Commissioner Kalonsky, because they went through a huge rehab, so they put the building on place. That's when it takes.
So it's an interesting public policy question on whether we should subsidize historic preservation or not. But the current ordinance says we do subsidize historic preservation of buildings. A property owner that owns a commercial historic structure has 2 options. They can let the historic elements deteriorate over time and decline, or they can maintain those and continue the historic integrity of their buildings. The city of Brownsville has decided to assist with preserving those historic architectural elements through this abatement program. You can send up a recommendation to the commission that it be some percentage, 25-75, 50-50, 60-40. That's your job. I mean, the commission can decide that. Or you can stick with the 100% that it's at right now and send up the plan with recommendations to amend the plan. Your prerogative. We'll do whatever you tell us to do.
I would say, I would disagree with you in that sense, because I believe that it's more important that the historical buildings be kept up, whether it be from a commercial entity or a personal entity, that whether they're making rental income off of it or not, they're still maintaining it, preserving it, and I think that the taxes that are not being paid via, through this exemption is money that would be reinvested back into that building. If I owned, I don't, but if I were to own something downtown that has, or own one of these historical buildings, I'd be looking at it as, okay, well, I've got that tax exemption, I'm gonna put that money, I can now afford to put that money back into it, whereas if I didn't, then I wouldn't be able to. Now, regardless of whether I was making income off of it or not, I don't think that would be, I think that would scare away more of the commercial investors from preserving those buildings, because they're no longer able to capitalize on it.
It's not lucrative.
Yeah.
But
So I-
you're saying it has to be a minimum of 50 years old.
No. What's your criteria for age? I think that's a question.
Right, yeah, right now, there's no deadline for recorded or national or primary. That's one thing that we are going to amend. And the other one, substantial rehabs, is always a maximum of 1 to 5 years, right? So it depends on the money that you
50
invest.
years old. He's talking
Oh,
about the
50
age of the
years old,
structure.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
50 years old, or older, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to go back real quickly. When you said that there's two options, one, you let it deteriorate, two, what was the second option?
You maintain those architectural elements, you paint them, you preserve them, you restore them.
Even if trying to keep that building up is going to cost way more than tearing it down and rebuilding. So the owner's forced to have those two options.
Well, it is in a historic district, and there are processes to consider demolition of historic structures. Of course, it has to go through review, and it may or may not be granted. But I think for Brownsville, because it really is an economic question, and I know Mr. Golonsky knows this, our rents downtown are fairly low. So I'm not sure what the overall rental rates are, but somewhere between 60 cents a square foot and $1 maybe would be the high end. And so when a property owner is receiving that level of rental income between operating the building, maintaining the building, paying taxes, and then you add historic preservation on top of that, it's pretty difficult to do at 60 cents, 75 cents a square foot.
No, it's less than that.
Let's see,
No, it's not. For historic buildings,
He's on
Yes,
fire
sir.
tonight, guys.
less than 60
He's on
cents a
fire.
square foot,
I'm gonna rent it at 50 cents a square foot.
I'll rent it today.
50 cents.
Go ahead
And,
and make-
so when you compare that to the new retail plazas in Brownsville that are getting $1.25, $1.50 a square foot, and they have a lot less maintenance because they're new structures and they're smaller, easier to maintain, they don't have the architectural elements.
Or the
You can see how
plumbing, or the
difficult it is
electrical.
to do it at 50 cents a square
I
foot.
have a list to you.
All right. All right, he means he agrees.
No, what I'm trying to tell you, a building that just
We're gonna
vacant
move
today,
on.
It's probably
Let's get to the
about
meat
9,
and potatoes here.
10,000 square feet. I lease it to you for $2,000 a month, and it's one of the oldest buildings here in downtown.
Warehouse,
Not a warehouse.
not retail.
A bank used to be a bank.
Okay.
Let's get to
Awesome.
Así que cae-
Okay.
the questions. Move them right along.
Well, that's the reason also why we have many grants also to rehab downtown, and we would love to have more. And that's one of the conditions that, the advantage of having an historic structure, that if you know how to play it, you can receive all these kind of helps.
No.
We just need a motion
I'm
to-
gonna move this right along. I have one question. Look on page
Sorry.
6.
Yeah, you did.
Proposed the rehab for the 100% tax exempt, and I'm looking at the last one. 1972 on Sunshine Road, 48
Yes.
years old.
Yes. That's a 1972 building. This was the Velton homestead. It was designed by Bob Belton, and he never completed the house. So the property owners went through the original drawings of Bob Belton and absolutely complete the house. The house is a marvelous.
No, I understand that completely, but I'm just questioning the 50 years old. And
Yeah, because there are certain kind of buildings that, depending on who design, you could shorten to 40 or maybe 30 years. That happens all the time in Dallas, in Houston, in Austin. In this case, Bob Belton was a native Brownsvillian. He went to ATM, he studied architecture, and he, for example, he designed the Darling Mauser funerary home, and he's one of the very best architects that we had here.
went to A&M shouldn't be enough for you to.
I was
Last
just
question.
questioning the years.
All right.
I have no
Oh,
other,
dude,
I have
hammer it
no
out, man.
other questions. Anybody else?
I have one last question. Besides a building being old, do you have to prove up the historic value
No,
of a
must
building?
be significant. That's the clue. That's the clue.
Okay, because I know of an example that the Historic Committee has met 3 times, and I think council knows what example I'm referring to.
Oh, yeah.
And for some reason, they can't move to the next step, to either move the buildings, get them demolished, and it's causing a lot of red tape. Council, any comments?
Comments other than, action taken, board, local board is acting on it or tabled it, and so until it gets untabled, we'll have to find out what happened. But the issue now is for the city's in a position to purchase those buildings, to move them out, what the cost would be, and I think that's the study that's being made now. How cost effective is it, what's it gonna cost the city to move those buildings to another area, and or that there's some decision, questions made about whether maybe the city could trade other property.
I have another question.
And move those.
We closed that public hearing.
I just want to, I got one more question. To go on that historical board, who chooses that board, that historical board?
City Commission.
The city commission?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Make a motion to approve staff's recommendation on the historic, the preservation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Going once?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against? We have 3 ayes and 1 nay. Nay from Mr. Rendon. Motion carries.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a second. Second to
Second.
adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion, meeting adjourned.